Hello Cancer, and welcome to your year 2023 Astrology and Horoscope forecast. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. Now, what I'm going to do initially is give you a structure of how I'm going to approach this video. Of course, a year starts on the 1st of January and consists of 52 weeks. But within that year, in astrology, we have 4 cardinal quadrants, including your sign, which always begins on the summer solstice. The start of the astrological year, however, in 2023 is on the 20th of March. So we have to reference back to cardinal quadrant 4, the last one of 2022, which will give us an insight of what we can expect around about the first 12 weeks of this new year. Also, we need to look at the lunar eclipse, which occurred on the 8th of November 2022, because it was a total one and it was highly charged, and that has a backdrop energy for 6 months. So we need to look at the first 4 months of 2023 with that in mind. Now, of course, we also have the solar return. So that's how the planets look as the new year begins. The relationship to one another, obviously their locations, and critically Mercury's retrograde in your sector of relating. I also want to be looking at the Cancer moon of the 6th of January, because that's going to be in an opposition to the Sun in its conjunction with Mercury. But they're both forging a really helpful link to Uranus, the planet of truth, but the planet of disruption, which has been in your sector of your future plans and continues to be so this year. Now, we also have the Cancer new moon, and that occurs on the 17th of July, and ironically that also is forging a very positive angle to Uranus. So being open-minded about your future is something which is going to be key this year. Now, apart from these developments, we also need to look at the planetary changes of some key players. Notably, Saturn moves into your sector of discovery, higher education and travel on the 7th of March, and it's going to be there through till 2025. Pluto also moves on March the 23rd briefly into a very deep part of your situation, the 8th house, before reversing back on June the 11th into your sector of relating. Now, the eclipse that occurs on the 20th or 21st of April is incredibly potent because it links with Jupiter, the planet of growth, but they are squaring up to Pluto. So that's going to be very important to describe that influence for you for the next 6 months, because that's very much about your potential for success and reaching towards your goals. Now, Jupiter, the planet of hope, of optimism, growth and luck, moves to join Uranus on May the 16th in your sector of the collective, your friendships. And if this has been a very disrupted area due to Uranus's influence, I think Jupiter can bring a much lighter vibe to your situation this year. But on July the 12th, the North Node reverses for the first time in 18.5 years into the sign of Aries, again emphasizing your potential for success. So there's so much to share with you, and I will also be going through each of the key events that occur day by day through this year to give you the most amount of insight and grip on what you can expect from 2023. However, if you would like to rise above your zodiac sign and embrace more serious astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can give you your personal forecast for 2023. If you order it in 22, you get the rest of that year free, plus your roadmap, your life roadmap, which will help you to understand your potentials, but also some of the repetitive challenges that come up. And you can get all of that package for 30% off by seeing the link beneath this video. And if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you've already done so, thank you so much for your support. Now please stay with me for your in-depth forecast. So Cancer, the big talking point this year is, of course, going to be Saturn and Pluto. Saturn is the planet of structure, but it is also the planet of restraint and restriction. And it has, over the last 2.25 years, at the start of this year, been in the part of your horoscope to do with where we're most invested, where we want to be intimate. So longer term finances may have been a bit blocked at a more practical level, but also, you know, if you have found it harder to be much closer to people, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. So Saturn moving into your 9th house is the sector of travel, higher education, and also higher knowledge. Now, of course, with Saturn, the harder we work, the luckier we get. Yes, we can be lucky with Saturn, but we really have to put the application and perspiration in to get the results. And it may take some time to really get used to its influence, but I can reassure you that Saturn is going to be forging some very helpful alliances right throughout this year, which will be particularly helpful to your sign. Now, Pluto very briefly replaces Saturn in the sign of Aquarius. Now, once it moves into the 8th house fully at the start of 2024, it is going to bring about some very profound changes in your life. But I think this year you just get a little bit of a taste of this influence, particularly on the back of that solar eclipse, which occurs on the 20th or 21st of April, because it squares up to Pluto. So your desire to manifest your goals and ambitions, which can come through that solar eclipse, maybe some of the motivation is financial, but it's going to be important to not be too cutthroat in your approach to those ambitions, because if you are, it could come back against you, to be honest. Now, Jupiter, of course, is the planet of hope, optimism and growth, and that's arrival on May the 16th in Taurus is definitely something to celebrate. And of course, the North Node on the 13th of July, that moves into your sector of success too. So that's drawing you towards the potential to raise your profile and basically gain greater recognition for your talents. But it will be an instinctive push towards potential opportunities. And I can tell you, around about the 1st of June, there's a glorious opportunity through your contacts or people that you've worked with collectively in the past to have a huge windfall or stroke of fortune. Now, this year is also going to see Venus, the planet of love and affection, but also of loot, in your 2nd house for 4.5 months. Now, part of that period, for 6 weeks, it will be retrograde, but Venus in the sign of Leo for you is brilliant for your financial hopes. We all know that we're coming into this new year with huge headwinds in terms of the collective financial situation. The one thing that Venus will make it difficult to do is stick to any kind of diet plan. So you may find calorific goodies quite tempting through the summer months if you're in the northern hemisphere, and through the winter months in the south. Now, as we sweep into the new year, we need to be mindful of the influence of the total lunar eclipse, which occurred on the 8th of November. And that really was very much about trying to measure your time in a way which works for you in terms of your individual expression that comes from the sign of Scorpio, against where the Moon and Uranus were in your 11th house of future direction and also friendships. Now, it's possible that some big change started to kick in for you as 2002 came to an end, but money, or lack of it, may have been an important consideration. Also, if someone has been rather possessive in terms of your particular freedoms and your need to pursue things in a way which gives you personal satisfaction, that could have also been an issue from that event. So jealousy and possessive friends or associations may need to make way as you come into this new year. Now, of course, we need to look at the final cardinal quadrant from the winter solstice of the 21st of December 2022 to get an idea of what you can expect for the first 12 weeks-ish for this new year. And this is because the cardinal quadrants don't match the annularity of our calendar. So the 1st of January is when our year begins, but the cardinal quadrants, or the Western tropical zodiac, begins on the spring equinox, the 20th of March. So a bit of an overlay from the first one that comes from the final cardinal quadrant of 22. And that sees a midpoint in the sign of Sagittarius, even though the sun is just in your sector of relating. So for you, that's house 6, but there's a square with Neptune. Your energy in the first 3 months of this year could dissipate if you spread yourself too thinly, or you get in any way distracted by things that are not core, that are not essential. So it's important also to understand the things that you want to free yourself from. So if there are some obligations and restrictions that aren't working for you, Neptune's really pushing you to try to create firmer boundaries. Now also, the moon is in Sagittarius, but it is in opposition with Mars, which is in your 12th house at this point and will be through to the 25th of March. Mars in the 12th house is quite tricky, and it is in retrograde. So it's potentially stoking up stuff from the past and bringing it to the surface in a way which can be disruptive. The moon's opposition with Mars can be a very polarized energy, but a very quick moving and irritable one. Difficult to get that tranquility that's important to Cancer people with the moon when Mars is afflicting it in this way. So just be aware some past issues could throw you off balance, and maybe also your energy can be a little bit overwhelmed, I think, in the first 2 or 3 months of this year, unless you truly pace yourself. Also, the sun in the 7th house is squaring up with Jupiter in your sector of success. Now, Jupiter is very much about aiming high. It's about, being optimistic about what we can achieve. But I think this combination is saying that if you're applying for jobs or doing applications, important not to over egg the pudding. Much better to under promise and over deliver than set an expectation too high. Now that brings us to the turn of the year. And I mentioned before about Mars being in retrograde through to the 25th of March. So just be mindful that Mars in the 12th house can see past angers or hurts or upsets that we thought we dealt with. They can still see them being reactivated in some kind of way. Now also in the solar return, Mercury is in retrograde in your sector of relating, and the solar return provides a backdrop energy unlike the cardinal quadrants, which are just 13 weeks apart from that first one of about 12 that lasts the whole year. So just be mindful as you're interacting with people, how people hear what you're saying may be different to how you mean it. Communication isn't really about speaking, it's about comprehension, and it's also about listening. So particular care is going to be needed around your interactions with others throughout 23. Wonderfully, however, Venus is in a combination with Pluto at the turn of the year, and that can bring some fortune. So if you're somebody who's wanting to build a business alliance, a network, or meet someone very special, this is a fated influence. But as ever with Pluto, when it's in a link with Venus, there often can be some kind of leverage involved because Pluto is the planet of power. So your relationships generally can take on a much greater weight in your situation. I think relationships for many of us, whether it's with our family or neighbours or friends or a partner, are a massive part of life. So just be aware that you're going to come across with extra power with Venus's combination with Pluto. But also, at the turn of the year, Mars in that 12th house is ironically forging a very good link to Jupiter in your sector of success. It may be a past skill or contact can come back and be remodeled in some kind of newer and relevant way, which can actually help you to make progress around a key goal or ambition. Also, the midpoint for the event of the solar return is just under 7 degrees in your sister water sign of Pisces. So for you, that is lovely because that's helping you to think about how you can open your world up. But it is squaring up with Mars. So Mars is being challenged there by that 9th house energy. So 9th, 12th can amplify sensitivities. Mars can be about anger, so you need to be aware of that at certain points in this year, but I will go through each of the tension makers as we go forwards. Now, I mentioned before that we do have that solar eclipse in Aries, but we also have a new moon in Aries. So you've got that to look forward to because that's also, along with the North Node, going to be emphasizing your potential for success. Now, as we go into the new year, there is a full moon in your sign on January the 6th. But because Mercury's in a retrograde and has tightened up with the Sun by the turn of the year, that issue with communication becomes critical. If there is a relationship that isn't working so well for you, think over the following 2 weeks, not just about what you need in the relationship, but also try to understand more acutely what may be expected of you and what the other person's needs may be. The more you can step outside of yourself, the more you can use that full moon to your advantage. January the 12th, however, sees Mars end that retrograde, and I think that's going to be really pleasing. January the 18th, Mercury ends it. So if there have been some cross wires in relationships, hopefully they can be resolved then. The 21st of January sees a new moon in your 8th house. Good for longer term finance, anything to do with business and entrepreneurship, but with Venus in this area in an exact conjunction to Saturn, if there is a deeper relationship which is bumping along the bottom, this could be a critical point. The 7th house is the discussion. The 8th house can be the decision. January the 22nd, however, sees Uranus ending its retrograde. There's going to be another retrograde coming later in the year, but for now, the disruptiveness that's been particularly prevalent around your longer term future is going to ease off somewhat. There is, however, a Pisces new moon on February the 20th, but that is in a conjunction with Saturn. Saturn just nestling inside the sign of Aquarius, so it's a disassociate conjunction. But if you're thinking of travelling, and with Saturn just about to move on March the 7th into your sector of travel, just be aware that you need to do your preparation absolutely meticulously. And as ever is the case, we can only control the things that we can influence. So some things with Saturn being in your 9th house may crop up if you are journeying this year, however carefully you prepare. And it's something you do need to just anticipate and be ready for. Now on March the 14th, Mars in your 12th house does go into a square with Neptune. This is tricky again. This provides the potential for a distortion around reality. Mars is desire. Neptune is a very misty, moving, rather ephemeral type of energy. And you may encounter someone around that time who's not incredibly honest, to be frank. So if you are thinking of signing a contract, and you've got some concerns about it, very important that you do get some professional advice. And with Saturn in your 9th house, you're likely to have quite a lot of interaction with people who are advisors, whether it's accountants, whether it's solicitors, barristers. These type of people can be important to your year in total. Now on March the 20th, we have the spring equinox and the start of Cardinal Quadrant 1 for the new astrological year. So of course the sun has moved into the sign of Aries, which is very much about success. The new moon which occurs then straight after this is actually going to be squaring Mars in your 12th house. The reason for this is Mars is really late in Gemini by this time. It's only a couple of degrees away from moving into your sign. So it's a kind of like a first 10th energy for you. So the following month can make you, can you see you make a bid for some kind of goal and be more ambitious. But it's important to understand that your thrust, which will come once Mars arrives in your sign more fully on the 25th, is balanced against the expectations of anyone that you need to link with who's in a position of authority, or more to the point, a position to influence your future prospects. Because with all this energy in the 10th house this year, if you really want to make it all the way to the proverbial boardroom, you can, but you may need to make some compromises if you're more of a natural bohemian. Now Venus also on that event, on the Aries new moon, is in your 11th house, and that's really, really nice. So of course, you know, our knowledge and our skills and our qualifications are important to success, but so are our personal skills. So your skills can flourish on the back of that particular position of Venus. Also Mars, although it's just on the border of coming into your sign, actually forges a really positive link to Saturn in Pisces, which just shows, you know, if you can find the right people to link with, even with Saturn in the 9th house, expansion, although it may be slow, can definitely be progressive as long as you go through all the steps in a very thorough and progressive way. However, March the 23rd sees that other big news story of the year, Pluto into Aquarius. It's only going to be there through to June the 11th. The 8th house, this can be the part of our situation to do with endings, but it also can be the part of our situation to do with rebirths. But anything to do with intimacy, sex, long-term finances, the things we share, the things we're very invested in or passionate about, you're going to get a bit of a taste for how you feel about some of those areas through to June the 11th. March the 25th, however, sees Mars coming into your sign, and after that very long transit of 7 months and 6 days, I think this is something you're really going to feel a sigh of relief about. And through till the 20th of May, you can really come into your own and be very singular in your approach. And also I think your physical vitality will pick up quite significantly as well, which is really delightful. Now the solar eclipse, which occurs in Aries, so we've got 2 essential new moons in Aries this year, in your sector of success and how you link to the wider world, it's linking with Jupiter. This is a big deal. This can really give you a springboard to success in the following 6 months. But as I mentioned before, because Pluto is angling in a right angle with the Sun, the Moon and Jupiter, it's vital that you're aware of your power and how you pursue your aims and ambitions. So if you take the ethical route and work hard, respectful to others, but just manifest your success through that sheer perseverance and application, it will be hugely satisfying, not just to you, but other people who are fond of you. But if you try to take those shortcuts or are underhand or ruthless to a great degree, it could be something that would come back in a distasteful way future forward. So just be mindful of that. Now on May the 1st, Mercury does slam on the brakes in the sign of Taurus. Uranus is there, still giving you a lot of encouragement to think long term and think outside the box. At this stage of the year, also the North Node is still in your 11th house. They're waiting for Jupiter to arrive on the 16th of May. So Mercury retrograde could see you a little bit unsure about a longer term plan. Mars is giving you a lot of drive, but suddenly you may not be quite sure that the previous objectives you had were necessarily still correct for you, because you're changing and your reality is shifting. So just be aware that there could be a little bit of a slowing down period, and also some friendships may seem to be in a state of flux. It doesn't mean to say that they're going to come to an end, but maybe there's a review that needs to go on. Now on May the 5th or 6th, depending on where you live in the world, the lunar eclipse occurs in Scorpio. So this is the mirror of the total lunar eclipse, which occurred in Taurus on the 8th of November 22. But this one again, because Uranus again is linking with the moon, is again emphasizing how do you balance your personal expression and individual needs against the collective and what other people expect of you. But because Uranus is there, I think you're going to be much more attracted to people who accept that you do need a degree of space and don't necessarily want to apply your interest to certain hobbies or groups or friendships on an absolutely relentlessly consistent basis. So you may need some moments to spin out and do your own thing. The people that are supportive will be fine, but some people will find that more difficult. May the 15th sees Mercury go direct, and obviously this is something that is really important, because the blockage that you may have felt can shift. So on May the 16th, Jupiter arrives in the sign of Taurus, and for you this is exceptionally good news, and probably one of the highlights of the year, to be honest, because Jupiter in Taurus, it has a natural appreciation because of the growth factor of Jupiter, of Taurus's appreciation for stability, but also of the good things in life, also sharing the good things in life with friends, or being generous to causes that really reach into your heart, because the 11th house is very much to do with our highest values. So Jupiter moving into this area I think is really lovely. But if there has been disruption or some misunderstandings with Mercury's retrograde or Uranus really in your 11th house full time since March the 7th 2019, and for those 5 months in 2018, I think Jupiter brings a more soothing, more positive dimension. So you may find that where you've been a little bit in and out of some associations, now you can be a little bit more applied, but without feeling that you're giving away your power quite so much. I think, you know, your sign is very much about power, because you are a cardinal sign, and of course the moon rulership of your sign means that you need to feel comfortable. So despite that lunar eclipse occurring in Scorpio and Uranus still being potentially disruptive, I think Mercury going forwards and Jupiter moving into Taurus is generally going to be a very good thing for you. Now, I don't know if you like a little bit of a flutter, but it may be worth considering if there is some kind of collective at your place of work, that if you all put a little bit of a stake in, then good fortune could be linked to a group in that way. Now from the 17th of May through to the 16th of June, Jupiter is within 3 degrees of the North Node, and they become exactly conjunct on the 1st of June. That can be a point of real fortune for you. So some kind of connection or friendship or association or cooperative or collaborative enterprise, or even if it's informal, where people are quite happy for you to retain your individuality, but some real good news is possible across that time. So that's wonderful. Now, May the 19th sees the Taurus new moon. Why is this important to your sign? Well, it's because the moon in the sign of Taurus is exalted. So it's the second best location for the moon to be after your own sign. And it's also forging a great link to Mars in your sign. So when the moon and Mars are perfectly allied, we get the receptiveness of the moon and the thrust of Mars working really well. So I think some long-term plan just seems to take on much more attraction and allure for you. On May the 20th, Mars, however, moves out of your sign and into Leo. Now, Mars loves being in Leo. Here it can really shine. Mars likes attention. It's very much about the ego. But for you, Mars in Leo is the second house. So the next 6 weeks can see you really motivated to improve your financial fortunes. Now, I've already told you that Venus is going to be really helpful to you in this regard, but Mars gives you a lot of thrust. But it also, if you're wanting some kind of romantic interlude, can bring the more sensuous side of your nature to the fore. However, on May the 21st, almost straight away, Mars goes into a rattling opposition with Pluto. But you know, if you are looking for some kind of dynamic connection to somebody new, oh my word, your heart really could be racing with those two. But it may be with someone who's rather intense and charismatic, but in some ways maybe a bit challenging to you. But if that's the case, it can feel all the more real and in the moment. In a more prosaic way, there could be a squabble, a big standoff about a financial or contractual matter at that time. So if you've got a boss or an organisation that you work for and you don't feel that you're recognised in the way you want, you could be much more assertive about putting across your side of your situation at that point. I've already told you about on June the 1st, the North Node and Jupiter coming together exactly. And that's the midpoint, because remember, through to the 16th of June, the good fortune can still run. June the 6th, however, sees Venus move into Leo. You're almost certain to see some kind of financial improvement occur almost straight away. The trick with Venus in the second house is not to spend any gains too swiftly that we have, but it is there for 4.5 months. It is retrograde from the 23rd of July to the 3rd of September. So 6 weeks, and that could be a time when you need to handle your resources very carefully. But your self-discipline around anything remotely gooey or calorific could fall to an all-time low. So, you know, if you have got a sweet tooth, just anticipate that Venus is likely to turn that up to max. June the 11th sees Pluto return to your 7th house. It's been there since 2008. I think you've got the hang of it now. Essentially, it's a very dramatic influence. If your sun is quite late in the sign of Cancer, I think Pluto is having a much more dramatic impact on you than anyone else. It could also be true if you've got some personal planets clustered around the sun or in any of the cardinal signs, whether it is Libra, Aries or Capricorn itself. But I think for a lot of Cancer people, you've gone through so many radical changes since 2008 around relationships. But if you are born later on, there could still be some big changes to come. June the 17th, however, sees Saturn go into retrograde. Now, Saturn retrograde slows things right down. If you are dealing with any kind of legal matter, contractual matter, going through those processes in a very precise way to make sure the minutiae is absolutely dialed in is absolutely essential. The Gemini new moon of June the 18th, however, is a bit awkward for you, and it raises some of those issues that happened earlier in the year. The potential for things to get a little bit, take on a life force of their own, to really get under your skin a little bit. Your sensitivity is a massive part of your nature, and it could be aroused in the month on June the 18th. However, on the 21st, the sun returns to your sign, which is marvellous. You're going to move into the moment. It's the summer solstice, and we have the beginning of Cardinal Quadrant 2. So this is the third important influence of your year. And I can tell you, excitingly, for the next 13 weeks, if you are looking for some kind of romantic interlude, Venus's conjunction with Mars, they're about 3 or 4 degrees apart in your second house, could really see you wanting to have those sensual needs met. Also, Jupiter in Taurus, your sector of the collective, is actually forging a very constructive link to the retreating Saturn. So maybe some information you gain, or an advisor can give you guidance about your long-term future, which really can be very good for you. July the 12th, the North Node reverses back into your sector of success for the first time in 18 and a half years. Think back to what you were doing then, and if that you may be younger and it's not so relevant for you, but think back to if you're older, to what was going on 18 and a half years ago, and you'll get a bit of a flavour of what's coming from now through till the end of January 2025. July the 17th, however, incredibly important event because it's your new moon. The Cancer new moon is the most important new moon of the year as far as the moon's concerned. The Leo new moon as far as the sun's concerned. So the moon obviously is your ruling planet. It gives you that need to be protective, to nurture, to seek security, but can also see you be defensive. But it's forging a very positive angle to Uranus. So Uranus is really coming back to you this year. I think it's more Neptune is the niggle. But in this particular context, I think you can give your personal appearance some kind of dynamic makeover. But also it's saying seize the initiative about the things that excite you. Passion is important in life. It's not just about sticking to what we know, going through the daily routines. You know, all those things provide a degree of stability, but they can also create a kind of sense of boredom. And I think Uranus is a very dramatic influence. So it's saying to you, get on the front foot from July the 17th for the following month. July the 23rd, though, does suggest if you have been a little bit free and easy with those resources that have been coming in with Venus and Mars in your second house, the retrograde saying, look, just be a little bit more mindful. On August the 3rd, there is actually a full moon in your longer term finances sector, which is the sign of Aquarius, but Mars is forging an amazing link with Jupiter. Now, this is a chance for you to, use your mind power, because Mars in the third house, linked to how you can connect to others. Your leadership skills, because you're definitely a leader, can really come into play at this time. Just be aware, with Mercury blocked by Saturn, however, that some kind of contractual matter could reach an impasse and you may need to proceed with care. Someone could be very cool with you. If you're travelling around about August the 1st, then I would say that it's important to not rush, enjoy the journey, go the scenic routes. Don't see it as a need to get there in the blink of an eye, because that's going to raise the potential for some issues. August the 16th, an amazing new moon in your sector of everyday resources, because it's combining with Venus. So Venus may be in retrograde, but it's still blessing this new moon. So the following 4 weeks can also see you at your sensual best. if that's something that you think, Patrick, behave, this is not going to happen for me, well, rethink. You need to reprogram. Think about what makes you alluring. If you enjoy good food, for example, Venus's combination with the Leo new moon is glorious to go and enjoy that. There's loads of pleasures in life. There doesn't just have to be the pleasures of sex. August the 23rd, however, Mercury does go retrograde in your third house. The potential for crosswires with neighbours, siblings, people in your community, technological issues to come up. We know the pack drill, but also, of course, Mercury retrograde suggests that if we've been putting off in the third house getting that domestic appliance fixed or replaced, or our computer has got loads of old stuff on it and it's not running as efficiently as possible, great opportunity to sort all those things out. August the 27th, do you want to move? Because Mars is going to give you a lot of thrust to do so, because it moves into your fourth house. But it also could make you a bit prickly and defensive. Uranus goes retrograde the second, obviously, of the year. Usual issues. It's about truth. It's about, in the 11th house, the higher truth. It is also about friendships versus our need to be individual and authentic, but it isn't at its best in Taurus. So could be some rethinking that's needed around some associations. The Pisces full moon, which occurs on August the 31st, is not great if you're thinking of getting away for some kind of vacation or holiday, because it is blocked by Saturn. But then again, Saturn on the 9th house full moon can really challenge you in some ways about some of your philosophies. You know, we live in a world that's very polarized. People don't have discussions now. They have points of view. And that kind of stuff could come up in some way in the following 2 weeks at that time. September the 3rd, Venus goes direct. So the blockage around your finances that maybe came from a little bit of over exuberance, that improves. But September the 4th, Jupiter slams on the brakes right through to the end of the year. It doesn't go direct until the 30th of December. So again, friendships may need a little bit of a careful thought. However, September the 15th, the Virgo new moon, again links in brilliantly to Uranus. So if some people make way, other new people can come in who share your vision, share your credo, and it can be exciting. Also, Mercury goes direct on the 15th, which is always welcome. September the 23rd, we have the autumnal equinox, and the Sun moves to 0 degrees Libra. A really important point, because this is the next of the cardinal quadrants, the fourth in this discussion so far. And the important part about this one is that although the Sun moves into your home zone, the midpoint is actually in your sector of personal expression, Scorpio, and in an opposition with Jupiter. Some kind of, your social life, your romantic situation can still revive. It's just not necessarily going to be in the way you expect. However, the Sun is in a quincunx with Saturn on that event. So just be aware that if you're wanting to move, things around contracts, the conveyancing, the legals may go painstakingly slow in that 13-week period. October the 12th, Mars moves into your 5th house. You can really strut your stuff, feel very alluring for the following 6 weeks. October the 14th sees the reverse solar eclipse. So this one is in your sector of home, emotion, family. And it's in conjunction with Mercury. If you're wanting an addition to your family, or you're wanting to move, the fact that this is in opposition to the North Node, I think can broadly be very good. So this last quarter could bring more homey stuff, the stuff that you're famous for, really to the centre of your celestial world in a positive way. Now on November the 1st, there's a wonderful new moon in your 5th house, and it's trining up with Saturn. So Saturn's playing a bit of a blinder, even though it's retrograde at this time. And it just shows that Saturn in the 9th house is essentially about knowledge. If you get educated or gain more information to guide your moves, it can be very helpful to you this year. It also goes direct on the 4th of November. We'll all take that. Because, of course, just talking more generally, Saturn in Pisces is, I think, going to bring much more sharply into focus the crisis we have around anything to do with pollution linked to rivers, lakes and seas. November the 24th, Mars powers into your 6th house. Your energy picks up. You're feeling really revitalized. There's also an amazing new moon on December the 12th in your 6th house conjunct Mars. Even more energy pouring through. But on December the 13th, we have Mercury going into a retrograde again, but this time in the sign of Capricorn, where it started its story at the start of this year. So that relates, the need to relate clearly, and being more conscious of the need to listen to where other people are coming from, even if it's not from where we are, is repeated. December the 22nd, we have the 5th of the Cardinal quadrants, but this one just influences the last 10 days of the year. And it does see the midpoint in a conjunction with Saturn. Interesting. That can see some important discussions about contractual matters at the year's end. The moon is broadly in a right angle with Capricorn, which is nearly in the sign of Aquarius. But I think what I really get from this cardinal quadrant that brings the curtain down on this year is there's great links. The retreat of Mercury is with the Sun, and they both forge really positive links to Saturn, but even more importantly, perhaps, the Moon and Jupiter. So some real good news can bring this year to a close, I feel. Mercury does rewind into the sign of Sagittarius, the first time it ventures out of an Earth sign on the 23rd. Those Christmas arrangements will need care, I think. But for you, this is the 6th house. So you're usually very good at organising things. So this just suggests just stay with your normal program in that regard. And then Jupiter goes direct as the year comes to a close. If you want to get together with a joyous group of people to see the new year in, Jupiter's timing is absolutely perfect for you. So you can see there's lots of opportunities to reach for the stars in terms of your goals, but also embrace your more idealistic credentials. Yes, you will need to be cautious around travel and learning new ways of being through Saturn's influence in the 9th house, also important. But I think that it's also the case that your relationships are an area that Pluto has basically been pummeling over the year since 2008. And this year, you're given an opportunity with the Mercury retrogrades to perhaps rethink some of your outlook around your interactions. So it can be a very enriching year for you, Cancer. It's been a pleasure being with you. Take care, stay safe, and goodbye.